So for today's video, I'm going to be bringing you my second edition of my top 10 or my power rankings, I believe is what I called it in my first video. And I'm going to go all the way through 1 to 10. Of course, I know in the last video I kind of had like 9 teams and then I had 2 kind of at 10, so I started at the top. I won't be doing that for this video or moving forward. Without further ado, we can just get into it, and I'm going to be starting at 10, and that number 10 for me is Team Envious. Now, Team Envious, of course, they have one bright spot, and that is, of course, Slasher. Slasher has been one of the top 3, top 4 ARs in the game, up there with, the likes of Formal and Dashi, who has been, exceptional in this game. And, for me, he is the hard carry of this team. He's the leader, the captain of the team. When this roster was announced that it was going to be formed, I think a lot of casters and a lot of analysts hyped it up, thinking that it was just going to be the exact same as it was in Advanced Warfare at the end when they were under denial. And I don't think that this has really, gone the way that people expected. Without putting too much of blame on one player, I think Classic is one of the main problems with the team. I talked about this in my CWL NOLA review, but I really do think that a roster change really needs to be made for this team to improve. Looking at my power rankings, without a roster change, realistically for me, they could move up 1 spot into 9th place, which of course I'll get into my 9th place team in a second. But for me, Huke and Temp are still growing a little bit. They still have some room for improvement. But Classic, as good as he was in Infinite Warfare and Black Ops 3, he just hasn't really shown it for me in this game. And I think that overall, not necessarily that he's on a decline, but at the very least, this team just doesn't work. It doesn't have the same dynamic that it did in Advanced Warfare because Huke and Temp aren't as good, outstanding Slayers, as they were. Slasher is still putting up the same performances, but the other 3 really just haven't put up the performances overall. So moving on to number 9, we have Red Reserve, the first European team in this top 10. And Red Reserve is, for me, CWL NOLA for me was a little bit of an overperformance on their part. But realistically, at the beginning of the year, I probably would have put them in the top 10 teams coming into the game. I thought that, Zero, as good as he was at Jetpack Games, and Josh, of course, always has that exceptional leadership that we've talked about, multiple times from him. I thought this team on paper was one of the better teams in Europe and potentially even the best team in Europe, despite the roster that Splice had. And I think that, CWL NOLA was obviously a really good performance for them. They get top 4. I don't expect them to be able to repeat that, which is, of course, why I think it's an overperformance. But I do think that they can kind of compete at that top 8 level. But at the same time, I think we could see some more downside, kind of similar to CWL Dallas, where they're not placing as high. But going forward into Pro League, I would expect them to make top 6 in their division, without having a perfect recollection of what division they're in. I just, I would assume that the way they played at NOLA, kind of leads me to believe that they should be at least a top 6 team in their group and be able to qualify for champs and season 2. So moving on to number 8. Number 8 is Echo Fox. Of course, Echo Fox made the change after CWL Montreal to pick up Aqua from Rise Nation when the Rise Nation team, essentially, broke up, but kind of unofficial, I guess, because they did keep 2 of their players, but half of their team left. Echo Fox for me was the biggest improvement team from all of the roster changes, except for maybe Rise. I mean, obviously Rise finished really well and is actually higher up in this power rankings list than Echo Fox, but I think Echo Fox got the most out of it. I think Rise already was kind of a top 8 team with their old lineup, and they stayed and probably got better as well. But realistically, I think Echo Fox went from top 12, top 16 to top 8, and maybe even higher than that moving forward. So, I talked a lot about in my CWL NOLA preview video actually about how much I thought that this Echo Fox team improved. I don't want to spend too much time talking about them, but I do think they showed a lot of progress and a lot of just talent and compatibility with this current lineup. I think Aqua was kind of the perfect pickup for them. Obviously, he meshes well with Facento during their time on TR and various other lineups. And I think that this Echo Fox lineup, is in for a pretty good year going forward. And, there's a lot of teams in here that I think that they end up, could be, they could end up being better than if, they keep progressing and they keep, playing at this high level like they are currently. But moving on to number 7, we have E United. And for me, E United had a decent event as well, lost what was the series of the weekend for me to TK. I know, very similar to CWL Dallas, they lose to TK and then things just kind of slowly fall apart for them. Whether they win a match or not doesn't really seem like they can bounce back fully and kind of, recover and make a nice losers bracket run to get things going. But overall, obviously a great performance from them at NOLA. And I do think that this team has solved a lot of the inconsistency issues I've spoken about before. But for me, it wasn't necessarily a question of if they got better or if they are better than I thought originally. I think the teams that I have above them, are genuinely just better. And if you're going to ask me if E United could beat a lot of these teams in a best of 5, I'd probably say yes. But overall, I just don't think that the body of work I've seen from E United leads me to put them above any of these top 6 teams. And of course, the number 6 team is kind of as close as I'm going to get to E United, and that's Rise Nation. And obviously, the big thing with Rise is that they did have half their roster replaced. Of course, TJ Halley and Looney stayed on that roster, and then they picked up 2 new players. And for Rise, obviously they won the 2K before the event, I believe 2 weeks before the event, and then they come to the event and they finish top 4, which is a great showing from them, and obviously a huge confident boost for a new lineup, and kind of like a sign that things should work out pretty well for them going forward, which is why I have them above E United. Obviously E United also won a 2K, but for me, they have not had as good of a performance on LAN as we've seen from this Rise Nation team. Of course, it's a smaller sample size because this Rise Nation team is a new roster, but overall, I think what we've seen from them since this roster formed is enough for me to put them over E United into 6th place. But again, I think those 2 teams are pretty tight as far as as far as the rankings go from 6 to 7. But on to number 5, we have FaZe Clan. And for me, FaZe Clan is another team in that mix. For me, Echo Fox, E United, Rise, and FaZe are all kind of interchangeable in the power rankings in a sense. I think that a lot of people could have Echo Fox higher, a lot of people could have E United higher, a lot of people could have Rise lower. I think FaZe is kind of secure in top 6 between the 2. Performances we've seen at LAN obviously struggled a lot at the beginning of the game in those online 2Ks, had to play through through open bracket at Dallas, but obviously ended up finishing top 4 at that event. And then, from there, they've never looked back. And they've had repeated performances from replays who is now using an AR that I got to be honest, I didn't expect. I think one thing that I always thought about replays was that the consistency just wasn't going to be there all the time, that performance that he had at Dallas. But, fair play to him. He's done pretty well, since Dallas and at the last couple of lands that they've attended, of course, being Montreal and being CWL NOLA. And he's played pretty well in 2Ks as well. So, for me, FaZe Clan is definitely in the top 6, but I put them in my number 5 spot above Rise just because I think the overall resume is a little bit better than Rise's so far. And then moving on to 4th, we have Splice, who, of course, being the second European team in this top 10, but the number 1 overall in pro points and in, my, obviously, power rankings. They, for me, performed, very poorly at CWL NOLA, but their performance at Dallas shows me that they are really a really good team. Obviously, I think they just ran into 2 really good teams. They ran into United and Echo Fox, who were both highly motivated to make Pro League, and Splice had kind of not officially, but officially. They did officially have Pro League secured going into the event. So, they just ran into two NA teams highly motivated, especially Echo Fox, who was right around that bubble. United a little bit safer than them, but both teams played extremely well at NOLA itself. And, Splice just kind of got the bad end of the stick at the whole event and, end up having a pretty weak performance and a weak finish overall. But I think going into Pro League, they're still a team looking to make, top 4 in their division and then, make top 4 in the playoffs as well. So, for me, Splice, if you're a Splice fan, I don't think you've got anything to worry about. I think your boys from Europe should be just fine in stage 1, qualify for COD champs and stay in the mix for stage 2 and move forward with the rest of the year with, most likely top 8 performances, top 6 maybe, and hopefully some top 4s. Obviously, they made the finals at Dallas, which I don't realistically seeing them repeating a finals appearance in the current state of things, but certainly wouldn't be unheard of if it did happen. So 3rd for me is Luminosity. And Luminosity is a team who has been maybe the most consistent team all year besides Team Caliber. They have consistently placed well in 2Ks. They've consistently done well at LANs outside of Dallas a little bit. I think, did they get top 12 at Dallas or somewhere between top 12 and top 8? If I can't remember exactly, but they finished 7th, 8th. I actually do remember now. But yeah, so top 8 is a little bit low for them, but that's kind of the one outlier, and having 8th as an outlier is still pretty good for them. And obviously, they win Montreal, they do well in all the 2Ks that they play in. Basically, they and then they make it to the finals here in NOLA. And for me, that kind of cements them above Splice is the consistent performances online to go with the win of a tournament, albeit Splice not at that tournament, Optic and TK also not at that tournament, but that kind of proves to me that they are a top 4 team when they win a tournament that has all of the other teams in it besides Splice, Optic, and TK. It was like a who's the 4th best team in Call of Duty tournament, and they were the winners of it. And then, of course, they finish in the finals at CWL NOLA, the most recent tournament, which definitely, for me, puts them at 3rd. So, of course, I'm now down to the top 2, and Optic Gaming is this team coming in at number 2. And, obviously I predicted Optic Gaming to actually win the event. I thought that despite how good TK had been and how consistent TK really was online and on LAN throughout, kind of this whole year, I felt Optic was really the best team in Call of Duty. And, deep down, I think I do still think they are the best team. And obviously they have the highest upside for sure. Their lineup is incredible. But, the performances that they've had don't allow me to put them above TK. I mean, TK has won the 2, major LANs in Call of Duty this year. And Optic obviously has performed well online, and they've had decent finishes at they had a decent finish at Dallas. They obviously didn't go to Montreal, and then they placed very poorly at NOLA by their standards. And that placing at NOLA just kind of signified to me that, okay, this Optic lineup definitely has some flaws in this particular title, and some things that they're going to have to work on. I mean, the picks and bans seem to go a little bit better for them. I know, obviously, they signed TP, which is a huge help for the kind of strategical aspect of the game. But in game, they still looked a little bit shaky. I know I saw a lot of tweets talking about kind of their inconsistencies on hardpoint, and then obviously their S&D was nowhere near perfect. Again, obviously at Dallas they started off really poor in S&D, then kind of ramped it up at the end of the weekend, and then when they ramped it up in S&D, they kind of lost it a little bit in Respawn, and I think that was kind of the same thing here at NOLA, but it was more inconsistent than it was at Dallas. I mean, you never really knew if Optic was going to come out and perform in the hardpoint or in the S&D, and you knew they weren't going to do both, but they were hopefully going to do either one. So for me, overall, Optic Gaming just didn't really have it, at NOLA, and overall just haven't had it in this game on LAN enough for me to say that they're number one. And then obviously it's no surprise who's number one. That is Team Caliber. And Team Caliber has won, again, both of the major LAN events now in Call of Duty World War II. They have the best sub player in the world right now in Kenny. They have Accuracy, who has been outstanding with an AR. Had a slightly had a worst event than in comparison to Dallas. But of course he was MVP at CWL Dallas, which, if you asked me who I was going to give the award, I would have given it to Kenny for both events. But Accuracy played great at Dallas, played fairly well at this event as well. And Chino, obviously, he was the MVP of this event for TK, played very well as well. And Theory, for me, I think I've been fairly critical of Theory in some points, whether that's publicly on a video or just privately in my thoughts or with people on Twitter or things like that. Because statistically, he is not very good, but he is the glue of the team. In sports, in conventional sports, they call it, the locker room guy, the guy who, maybe, again, going with conventional sports, doesn't play a lot, but keeps everything together. He's like the veteran. That's definitely what Theory is for this Team Caliber team. He keeps everything in line, keeps all the players, in check, whether it's in game or out of game, and really allows his, essentially star players to be as good as they are, but still have the teamwork mandatory for this team to succeed at a high level. Because the big thing about Team Caliber is they don't have the individual players that we've seen in the past, put up high performances consistently, but they do have teamwork that we've seen succeed multiple times. A good example is E6 back in Advanced Warfare. When they broke out in Advanced Warfare, that original lineup at UMG Cali, they were centered around the fact that they had amazing teamwork. Obviously, General was an amazing AR in that game, but their team was so good with coordinating pushes, especially on, like CTF, for example, and Hardpoint and S&D especially. They were just so good at coordinating, which is why, they kind of broke out onto the scene and kind of almost shifted the meta slightly towards more team-based play. And I think that's what Team Caliber did in this game. And then as well as that, Team Caliber also shifted the meta with picks and bans. Obviously London Docks is probably the most popular map for pro teams on this game. And TK in the first, LAN of the year, they came out and said, we will not play London Docks against you. We will ban it every time. And we know that you guys are uncomfortable to play Gibraltar or play Arden's Forest or, whatever map it may be, or St. Marie, and we're not scared to play you on any of those maps. And obviously, especially Arden's Forest, we saw how popular and how dominant they really could be on that map, because when you think about it, if you ban the most popular map, the second most popular map for most cases is going to be Arden's Forest. And when people pick Arden's Forest, that's when we found out, okay, Team Caliber knew what they were doing. They knew that Arden's Forest was their best map, so they banned London Docks, the popular map, forcing teams to pick Arden's Forest against them, and essentially just beating them purely from the picks and bans before the series has even started, which is, it's unbelievable for a first LAN of the year for a team to be kind of that ahead. And I think we saw it here again. Obviously, teams, didn't want to play Arden's Forest against them. That's why the E United series, for example, was so good, was because right off the bat, you saw E United. They were just banning Arden's Forest for every game type. They're like, we're not going to play you on Arden's. You're going to have to beat us on London Docks. You're going to have to beat us on Gibraltar. You're going to have to beat us on St. Marie. And, TK obviously did in game 5. But, that series was so highly competitive because E United made the right plays to adapt and try to get Team Caliber uncomfortable, which is what you have to do when you're playing the best team in Call of Duty, or you're playing a team that has higher skill than you. You have to make them uncomfortable on the maps that you're playing them against, or you just won't have a chance. Because with teams like Team Caliber, their teamwork is so good that even on maps that they're uncomfortable or don't play a lot, they will still beat you just because they know how to rotate well as a team. They know how to, set up for a flag cap. They know how to take a site or defend a site with teamwork. They just are so good with their teamwork that even if you have better individual skill than them, like Optic, like, probably Luminosity, probably United as well in some cases, that you just won't beat them. They just are so good with the teamwork and with the map picks that they will just consistently beat you. And I'm super excited to see Division A play out in the Call of Duty Pro League, because we're going to get Optic and TK twice in two best of fives, and even more so probably when we get to the playoffs, to see these teams match up and see if Optic can finally, get the teamwork that they need to match up with the skill that they, so obviously have in the overall skill gap that they can create against teams in general. So that is my top 10. Went on a little bit of a TK rant there, but it just gets me super excited to see how good they are. And like I said, so just to go through my top 10 again, it is 10 Envy, 9 Red Reserve, 8 Echo Fox, 7 E United, 6 Rise, 5 FaZe, 4 Splice, 3 Luminosity, 2 Optic, and Team Caliber at number 1. If you did like the video, please leave a like, please subscribe, and comment if you have any recommendations for videos, or if there's anything you want me to look at, or if you have any questions for me. But yeah, definitely, I definitely want to emphasize, leave some video recommendations for me, guys. I do have videos that I want to make. I have like a list that I keep for videos I can make, that videos I could talk about, but definitely let me know what you guys want to hear about, and if I can find enough about the topic to make a decently long video, or even just a video that's essentially at least 7 minutes long is basically what I shoot for, then I definitely will make that for you, and we can get it out there as quick as possible. I do try to follow a schedule of posting a video at least once every other day. And I have a lot of videos out right now, so any recommendations you make for me will probably be coming out a couple days after you post the comments, so please be patient. I'm sorry about that, but I do try to follow and keep a schedule for my videos. But again, so like, subscribe, and comment any videos you'd like to see. But for now, we will see you later, and I hope you guys all have a good one, and I'll see you on the next video.